Start kicking this off. Just want to welcome everyone to the breakout session panel. Discussion today is nonprofits in cyber. My name is Ian. I am with the BSides organization team. And yes, to answer the questions that have come in on Twitter, yes, I am larger than life. That's the way it is. Yes, I'm 7 foot tall, but that's how it is, and we'll end that conversation now. We have 4 individuals from 4 amazing nonprofits that I've been able to talk to briefly over the past couple of days, and I want to get them into the conversation as quickly as we can. The ground rules are basically this. Those of you who are listening as attendees, you are the reason we're here. You are the reason why we want to reach out and talk to you and give us some of your stories, etc. Ask your questions, however mundane or textual or detailed you think it might be. Go ahead, ask the questions. I will get to your questions as the priority. A request for our speakers: if you hear anything going on in the conversation that another speaker is talking about, feel free to step in and feel free to add your 2 cents, collaborate from there. If we ever get to that point of the uncomfortable silences, I do have stuff that I could possibly get to, but my goal is never to have to come down to this page whatsoever. So what I'm going to do briefly for this first part is go to each one of you one by one, just ask you to introduce yourself, introduce the nonprofit organization you are with, the concept of the nonprofit, and maybe the origin story, either the origin story of the nonprofit or the origin story as to how you became involved with the nonprofit. And since Mary is sidetracked for a moment, I will pick on Mary Galloway first. Welcome, Mary.
So, yeah, we're in a hotel in San Diego on vacation right now. So that was my other half that walked by. But Mary Galloway, I am the CEO and a founding board member for the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. We are a national 501c3 cybersecurity community for women and girls, encouraging them, providing support and resources to get them into cybersecurity, get them to grow in cybersecurity, and get them to stay in the industry. My day job, I work for Palo Alto as a customer success architect, helping customers implement their XOR products, so security orchestration, automation, and response tools.
And if you don't mind, so the genesis of Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu?
Yeah, that part. So we got started in 2012. Lisa Gibbs is the founder. She's a hacker by trade, military vet, soccer player, and an artist. I don't know if people know that, so she might get mad that I said that. And she started the organization in Northern Virginia as a way to continue to get hands-on with pen testing and learning. A lot of the meetups that were there at the time, either they fizzled out or she just didn't feel comfortable participating. And she wasn't getting what she needed from that. And so she said, let's start a meetup. Let's see what happens. And it was a virtual meetup as well as an on-site meetup. And that kind of blossomed into more workshops, study groups. That's how I joined the group. I failed CISSP the first time. And she had a study group going on, and I was like, let me join this really quick. And that kind of spun into conferences and more study groups and workshops and chapters, and pretty much all that people see when they see Cyber Jitsu mentioned anywhere in the world at this point. So it was started out of a need for a place for us to go and learn and really get deep into the hands-on technical stuff.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to pass the wand over to Jack. Introduction, who you're with, and the genesis story for you within that organization or the organization itself.
All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Jack Robertson. I'm the vice chairman for BSSec. By BSSec, we are a nonprofit and then also a pretty vibrant community, about 3,000 members. We're primarily Slack-based, and then a good way to think about it is that we have this nonprofit wrapper over it, so we sort of have 2 main arms in that sense. what next? Oh, my day job. I'm a security engineer at a BlockFi, and I live up in New York. And prior to that, other security engineer job before that in grad school, and then I was an Army officer for 5 years in the artillery in upstate New York. And the genesis of our organization was, I think initially, it started back in February 2018. I actually looked at the Slack logs for that, and I think there was probably about like 10 people initially. And our founder was Keith Adams, who, well, one of our founders, but I think he initially steered us through the early years. He's known, I think, in some of the cyber education areas. But how we really got from, like a Slack hangout to what I think is a pretty formalized community at this point with a lot of different facets is when you're trying to leave the military or you're a veteran in a job that you're not necessarily satisfied with, you're trying to get somewhere. And I think, when I say veteran here, I think it's really broadly applicable to anyone that's trying to get from something in non-tech to a tech job. So hopefully this advice is generic, that helps people. Everyone sort of had a collectively similar experience, especially in terms of people that actually manage to make that leap, and not everyone does. So why we exist is to kind of be that one-stop shop of, depending on where they're at in that process, going from something they're not quite happy with, or let's say they're in the military and they have this target. Wherever they're at in that process, we do a pretty good job at providing the railroad tracks into that. It's a mix of how do I install Kali Linux? We got OCP study group. I also horribly failed an OCP attempt a couple years ago, so I empathize with that system experience. And now I think the last year was definitely interesting. I'm glad the community was able to grow and I don't want to say survive, but I think everyone in the nonprofit space had that challenging year. So at this point, we're looking at the next stage of formalization. There's a lot of interest in what we do, and it's a mission that really matters and helped me immensely. So that's why I volunteered for it. And yeah, did I hit all the bases, Ian?
That's very good.
All right.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and stay on the couch for a moment, jump over to the far side, and talk to Stephanie first.
Thank you, Ian. My name is Stephanie Lewis. I am originally I'm over SECon 202, also called SecCon. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and while I was there, I actually did a meetup group in the city of Detroit, just trying to get more African Americans into coding. And so I ran that around, I think it was like 2010 to 2013-ish, 14. Then I came down here to DC, and you guys had a lot of different meetup groups, definitely more than in Michigan. And I met Tyrone when I first came down here, Tyrone Wilson, who's an excellent mentor to have. And I decided that, hey, why don't we get another cyber group, started? So I actually went to DEF CON 2019. Met with some of my friends from, DC and Detroit. And it was amazing, just all of us, them getting to know each other and stuff. And so while I was there, I saw Jason Street. He was giving a talk late at night. It was like 11 p.m., something like that, at Planet Hollywood. And I was like, I want to go to bed, but my friends were like, no, let's go hear him talk. So I was so glad I went after a long day of, DEF CON talks. It just wears you out sometimes. And went there, and he's like, yeah, go get the group started, and it's needed. And he just kind of lit a fire underneath me, and I just really enjoyed that panel discussion. That was one of the best panel discussions, I've ever heard, just about cyber, where it is, where it can go, and the future and what. And so I left there. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. So SECon, it stands for Southeast. DC, that's where we try to meet. So we were meeting in the libraries, but then obviously COVID happened, so we were on Twitch. And I'm not the best at OBS yet, so I got to get the streaming down so that videos really are up there recorded and things like that. But what the group is for is just for focusing on encouraging more African Americans, in cyber in that area. And so we do the workshops, and the workshops are just focused on configurations or the latest tools. It's not so much like a demo, so to speak. I really wanted the participants to really leave with something, that they can go home and take further. So the future of the group, I hope to keep with the Twitch, but I also hope to meet in person.
Mhm.
I think the libraries and some open community centers are kind of testing the waters on opening up, which is great. So that's just what we hope for. I hope to put together kind of a simulation. I know a lot of people do. Conferences are great. We're not big enough to do a conference yet, but I was hoping to do some type of a simulation. Just get a group of 25 people together, and we all do something, both like a lot, locky hacking and on the web. So that's just the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to make one request for those who are here in person as well, since we are dealing with one mic that we're passing back and forth. Rather than passing it to me to ask a question, if we get to that point from the channel or from everywhere else, I will ask you to repeat the question for those listening on the stream, and we'll go from there.
Sure thing.
And we have already some feedback from you from Ellen Marquez on thank you for sharing how you took a call to action and ran with it. One final introduction here. We're about a little bit in, but I want to make this here as well. Cheryl, good afternoon. I would love to hear more on you, on your organization, what brought you into the background story or the origin story, if you will. And let's hear some more.
Okay, great. You can hear me all right?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for having me today. And I'm here to represent the Diana Initiative. I'm one of the founding members. And what we are is we've grown as an event that we celebrate the diversity that brings all of us together. And we are focused on women, non-binary peoples, and inclusion in our field. And what we want to do is elevate and inspire and support our attendees from every race, every culture, every level of skill to enable them to learn, to grow, to network. And each year we try to do something bigger and better. So this year we're very excited because our conference theme is about sparking a journey. And we wanted to put something uplifting because it has been a really rough stretch for everybody. And we kind of symbolize it with the emergence or the metamorphosis of all of us coming out of this pandemic and just taking flight and soaring to wherever it is that we want to go. And that kind of dovetails with, I guess, my own origin story when I discovered cybersecurity after going back into the field as a stay-at-home mom for 10 years because we needed the income, and just discovering this place that captured my imagination, was an endless source of growth and learning, which is what I love. And finally, a place where I felt like I truly belonged because I was always that weirdo who, and I discovered this is a whole community of weirdos who love to learn and want to break things and ask the most fabulously, infuriatingly challenging questions. That is everything I could want and more. And that's why being able to give back through an organization like the Diana Initiative means so much, because my first experience, I took myself down to DEF CON in 2015, and there was a group of us sitting at a food court under Bally's, just getting away from the madding crowds, talking about all the things that we were interested in, and we were learning and sharing that passion and discovering this feels so good. What if we could do this again, like make an event that feels safe and comfortable like this, where we could all get together and talk? Because for women, for non-binary people, to share their ideas. And out of that germ of an idea, the conference took hold, and then we will be celebrating the 5th year of the Diana Initiative, where we have talks and we encourage people to come and give talks, and we mentor new speakers because it is really hard to get to do that. And we have villages because people want to learn things about lockpicking or try their hand at a CTF and have some encouragement and guidance. And that is what our organization is all about. And I warmly invite everybody to come and join us again. We'll be doing a virtual session this year. We've got fantastic keynotes as well, and virtual villages for you to take part in to just come and learn and grow with us.
And I have to also add, it's amazing because I had the opportunity over the past couple of months to sit down and talk briefly with each of the panelists today, and even talking with Cheryl there a bit. As a queer professional myself, I've watched over the past 3.5 decades now the changes in society and the changes in culture and the changes in tech, et cetera, from a point where it was the surest way to get fired if you had a conversation in that sense, to the embracing, especially at companies such as where I am now at a major US financial, won't be able to mention it, but they're out there. Well, as we are right now. I don't have any questions yet off of the chat yet. So I want to drop one just here because we have a wide range. I mean, Jack, you're with an organization that's what, about 3,000 participants? Cheryl and Mary, you're with organizations that are international as well, and Stephanie, you're with an organization that is now 2 individuals.
Yeah, 2 individuals, but we have a lot of, yeah, it's, like I said, we just started towards the end of 2019. So yeah, it is me and another individual, but our participants are about 25. You know, online, in person, was a little bit less, obviously, because we had social distance before the pandemic. So we're hoping to, like I said, grow locally and really focusing on developing the skill sets, learning the new tools, and actually getting better even at like Python, for example, because I'm partial. I'm not a Java person by any means. I'm loyal to Python, I guess. But yeah, so just them getting more confident with that. Because I think what I'm finding out in the cyber community, they're very good at maybe doing certain types of configurations, but they could be stronger in actually programming in something such as Python.
So if you don't mind me asking, or repeat that, what have you had to do in order to make that introduction from I have an idea to I now have a community of 25? And what are you doing to turn that into now I have a community of 250?
Should you repeat that for this?
Yes.
Yeah, so what am I doing basically to grow the community from 25 to 250? For me, I'm not one about the numbers because I'm learning that when I have somebody come in and do a workshop, you can really only teach like 7 people. You know what I mean? For them to really go deep. I'm more concerned about the depth. How deep can we get into InMap, or how deep can we get into learning about phishing and the various kinds of malware so that they come away and feel like they mastered something. So that's my biggest, that's at the core is depth and breadth. How much can we really dig into it, and raising the confidence level. Because I think when you spend time and knowing the mindset, I think people forget, like there's a certain mindset that goes into hacking that I have other people kind of talk about with the workshop. So that's, if it grows to 200, great. But the goal is to have people come, really develop, grow, and then be, wicked good on their job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything to add? Were you good?
Yeah, actually, I would agree with the depth approach. I think the really cool thing about BSidesNoVA is you see this, pretty longitudinal. Did I say that correctly? I think so. But over time, if you will, you see a lot of people kick off their cyber attempts, and a lot of them make it, and some of them don't. And I think what's really important for the people that do stick it out is a lot of motivation comes from actually closing out a topic and moving on to the next one. So the trend we see a lot is they get 1/3 of the way through the Python book and they jump to something else because they've read job description and they know they need to do. They also got to use AWS. So it's what happens is that over 6 months, you get these. They almost feel like they're treading water, and then their motivation starts to just sap out. And that's running a nonprofit. That's not what you want. So I think the direction we definitely recommend is like, explore that, go deep. There's going to be time to learn the rest of the topics, but it's really important to check that box on like the basic knowledge. So I fully agree for what it's worth.
From Mary's perspective, support that individual from the first time they walk in the door to an individual who has matured and improved and progressed and gained the benefit out of your organization, and whether they turn around and are able to give back immediately, et cetera. What is that nurturing process like for you two?
So for us, we like to make sure that we stay in constant contact with them, because like the other two, Jack and Stephanie said, they'll start and then they may be like, oh, I'm done, let me go on to the next topic, right? So we try to make sure we have resources available to keep them focused on those tracks, whether that's our Slack channel, whether that's additional workshops, whether that's individual small tribes that we just launched at the end of last year. We just want to make sure that they have the resources and they know that even if they don't like this topic anymore, there's still other areas in cybersecurity. So like most folks that come into the industry, they want to go into be a pen tester. It's like, well, there's like a plethora of other opportunities out there besides just pen testing. Let's tap into some of those other skills and see where a better fit might be for you.
Cheryl?
No, that's a really good point. I do threat intelligence, and that's just based out of my absolute fascination with bigger picture and learning all I can about threat actors and having an overview understanding and then being able to communicate to a diversity of audiences. That is not pen testing. That is not scripting. And it speaks to, you can do a lot of really good work in this field and you don't have to just look at one area. And they're all really fascinating. And then I get to speak to pen testers and I get to speak to red teamers, and we get to exchange our observations on what we're learning. And at the Diana Initiative, we don't have a formalized training or curriculum program so much as we are about, we mentor our first-time speakers, but we also are more of a community. So we find resources, we encourage one-on-one, and we're looking at how can we, what are our attendees or the people who are in our group asking for, and how do we meet that? And then what's coming to us from like outside, from the community as a whole? What are the kinds of issues that are being raised? Where are we going further down that road? And looking at it from that perspective.
So from what I understand, what the suggestion there, Cheryl, is that the organization is built more organic to the needs of the individuals as they come in, and that you can modify and change your structure to help them find one links to another. I guess the question would be, there's a secondary question in there, and I think that it's a phenomenal business model, or a model that you're working off of there, Cheryl. But my question for the others, and it would be just, I'm wondering from my own perspective, you come in, you have an idea, you have a focus, you go out, you establish that idea, you establish that focus. You're at a point where the possibility is there to grow now or to expand. How do you do that intelligently without overreaching or without deflating, or without watering down that initial intent, et cetera? I'd be interested to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, sure. So a mentor of mine he's an executive director for a nonprofit called Operation Code. It's similar, but it's not cybersecurity focused, necessarily more generic tech. Conrad Holloman, if he's watching this, I doubt he is, but you did a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. So he said a buzzword he had was manage scale. And what that means is that as a nonprofit, to use another buzzword, like the veneer of legitimacy is pretty easy to create. It's not too hard to register one of these things. You can get a lot of services through G Suite that's suddenly you got the email address, you have the Slack group, and you're off to the races. And the other side of that, where you have to really think about in the leadership role, is if you build it, you have the right mission, and you have a target population that other people care about, or other entities, other nonprofits, you'll start to get that interest pretty organically, assuming you have a lock on like a good cause. And growth isn't everything. If you do a hyper local mission, I think I've done that as well in Boston. I think it's really, really rewarding. But let's say you are going.
Technical difficulties.
I wonder if they can still see us. Let me check the phone and see. All right. Okay.
Okay, hold a sec.
Hey, you know what?
This is the stuff that makes conferences special.
And this is pretty awesome because you don't have this issue when you're in site, right? But you never know. That's another thing about being a nonprofit that you have to work with is understanding. Okay, how do you bounce back from it? It's all good though. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can see us. Oh no, it's not showing up on my schedule.
Okay, I see something.
So on a side note, I'd like for us to work together, figure out how we can work together a little bit more.
Oh my God,
Hey.
I love that. Hello, Ian.
Hey, Ian.
I will. Whoop. Kill that. Mute.
Oh no.
No.
There you are.
No.
Live now. I'm aware of that, but I want to see our session.
All right, how about now?
That's okay.
I now do it.
You guys sound
Test number 3. Yes, I think we're
Yes.
here. Are we here?
I can hear you.
You hear that?
Cheryl and
I can hear you just
Mary,
fine.
can you hear us?
Yes.
Hold on. And now I need my volume turned on.
We did a conference last year. I got Zoom bomb.
So
Come on, Windows, work for me. All right, are we back?
Hey.
hello there.
Okay, very good.
Much
So-
more fun.
It now becomes a little bit more cozier, and you get to see the wonderful ring above the window, etc. So, Jack, I think you were talking about
What was I ranting about?
how to grow consistently without overdoing it.
Manage scale.
Yes.
You can become a legitimate organization in terms of things that other organizations want to see before they'll interact with you pretty easily. It just it takes a couple weekends of work. And what's important, once that interest comes in, you have to be able to manage that intake really effectively, because that's your shot to have local company X or even like a library. It really doesn't matter the level, but they're going to start staking their reputation in their organization by interacting with you, and you really have to respect that. So managed scales is how that works, and that you're able to absorb their interest, you're able to do something with it, and then you're able to actually make an impact such that they're willing to keep doing this. So that's really how I think about this. However, everyone else does leadership stuff here too, so I'd be definitely interested in hearing what they say.
I just kind of wing it. Whatever sticks to the wall works.
Yeah, I agree on that in another area, but not to monopolize the conversation.
Yeah, no, it's not efficient for growth, but for scale, you got to have a plan, right? You have to, and the plan may change over time. We had a plan in the beginning, and that plan has changed and evolved and grown, and it's gotten us to where we're at now. But you still have to continue to build a plan, and I think you have to have a really strong team. Most nonprofits are volunteer run, and so sometimes it can be difficult to run solely on that and scale. At some point, you have to start thinking about, okay, how can I get funding in to hire an executive director that manages the day-to-day operations of this stuff? Because all volunteers have jobs, they have responsibilities, they have other things they have to do. And so sometimes if you want something done today, it may take a couple of days to do. So having a solid team in place helps grow the organization tremendously if that's the goal of the organization. And then having support of other nonprofits and other organizations plays into that as well.
Now, is there a good clearinghouse or a good method by which nonprofits are discovering each other and their intents, et cetera? I mean, what is the community of nonprofit like? Does that exist?
So there are associations for that, but Twitter and LinkedIn. I don't know, Cheryl. What do you think?
Honestly, the networking, for example, we have a lot of connections, besides Las Vegas, the people who have been involved in that, the core DEF CON group and the people involved in that. And there's a lot of mentoring and knowledge sharing. As perhaps one of the most wonderful things I can speak to about this community is that they are willing to help people who are starting and share what they know to get them on the right track. It's huge. That's what we got to do.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's I would love sponsors. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we initiate that? What do we do for something like that? So that's what we're kind of looking at in the future. What we're doing now is we're trying to build up our Discord. And also support people taking certs. I know I'm trying to take the CISSP, and one other one right now. So just being there for the participants in that way. And but I think I'm very good at like getting people together. But that next step where the other groups are is, okay, now how do you get sponsors, or how do you get,
that's an important question. I'm sure there are people who are listening in the attendees list or the group chat, et cetera, for who have this vision or have this, hey, I could do something like this. I could do for my particular area of interest or my desire, whether it's cyber or whether it's another area of interest, et cetera. But it's just, how do you make that transition from I have this idea to let's make it happen? And part of it is the gumption to go out and do it, but then there's that point of how do I finance this or fund this moving forward? Any thoughts as to how to make that iterative jump into that next area?
Sure, I'll let you go because you guys get more sponsors.
What it comes down to really is, that you're going to need to have a plan. You're going to have something like a prospectus to present to anybody that you're going to ask help, especially financial help of. And the other thing is asking people who are in the roles of sponsorship, funding, or running this kind of an event. Start with somebody that or just hit them up on Twitter, and just, for example, me. if I don't know, I will find somebody who can help you, because that's what we do, because somebody helped me not so long ago, and that seems to be the way that we do things here, and it works really well. But yeah, that's what I would say. Map out your idea. What is the benefit? What is the takeaway? What is the difference? What sets you apart? What do you think this is going to cost? What do you need to be able to make this happen? If you've got like the equivalent of a business plan, it enables you to be taken seriously. People can answer those kinds of questions. People can say, oh, okay, yeah, I know somebody, or okay, yeah, we could do that. We can make this happen. So that's how you start. Does that help?
Yeah, I think I'd add two things to that. First, part of it's just you got to own it and start. I'm not in sales, but it's really similar to cold calling. I think I know I look pretty far from my military days, but our board chair is Tom Marsland, an absolute go-getter in this regard. He just started emailing. I hope I don't get into trouble in terms of like mixing up sponsor versus supporter versus et cetera. But let's say interesting companies that believe in our cause, and be a culprit if I screw up there. But we just emailed places like OffSec, Hack the Box. I think CrowdStrike sponsored our conference last year. You just email them saying, this is who we are. This is our mission. Would you like to support us? And like, you just got to do the hard ask sort of. And I think if you have a population that company programs care about, it's not just about companies, but if you have the right population, the right mission, you will get response, and if you don't, it's one of those things where as the leader of the organization, you got to cycle back and say like, hey, is my messaging off? I have this vision of what VetSec is, but when I speak at a conference, how are people responding to it? You really do have to do that self-reflection. Then the other thing, which I guess I should have mentioned earlier when I was introducing VetSec, is another great way to get interest and support for your organization is having an offering for senior people. People like Ian, for instance, they're senior in careers, but young and everything else, right? But on a serious note, though, because those are really important advocates for your organizations. It's why VetSec is at BSides right now, for instance. We have a lot of them don't necessarily participate in terms of the daily chatter, but they are in there, and if you know that they're the reasons why they're in their organization, and usually for us it's mentorship and caring about the mission and the residents themselves. They are very good stakeholders for advancing the organization. They may not want to do a board membership role, but they will if you just keep asking them, they'll keep supporting it. And you gotta be a little selfish in that regard because you're there to steer the mission and the organization. But they're really important based on membership, and figuring out how to support them is important.
I mean, even myself listening to this conversation right now, I could also say, Stephanie, I mean, we're in the same area regionally. Within my workplace is a very well-established women insider, as well as a very well-established Blacks in Tech organization. The question is, what could we reach out between you and the leaders of those groups, since they're community-based as well, and so we can really get some of those discussions moving.
It works.
Yep.
Works.
Yep. And same with where I'm working. Yep. Those are two big hallmarks, and they're getting even bigger. And that's something that you could definitely approach because they want to fund community initiatives like what you are talking about. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Boy, oh boy, do we all make mistakes. I can still trip over my own 2 feet really well, thank you. So it's an important learning process. It's kind of like the OODA loop, right? You just keep going around and you learn from each iteration. Just do it.
We had a question that was just brought up to me earlier by one of the founding individuals here at BSidesNoVA. And it was more a specific question, and you all may not be able to jump in or answer it, but it's just one that I thought would be curious. For those who have industry experience, what are the primary differences in how a nonprofit operates versus how an industry or a private company operates? Is there any major differences there?
Nope. A nonprofit is a business. It's the only difference is that the money you raise doesn't go to stakeholders; it goes back into the organization.
Yep.
So you have to think of a nonprofit as a legit business, legit like Capital One or whatever organization, Palo Alto. Same structures. They all need money. They all sell a product. For the nonprofit, the product is usually a service. But it's
outcomes tracking too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The only difference is, besides the money part, is how you're funding your staff, whether they're volunteer or not. And so there may be some financial, reporting differences, but for the most part, it's the same. It's just a business.
And actually, sorry.
Go ahead, Cheryl, please.
I was just going to say, Mary raised a really good point about the importance of having a core body of people or several people to help you consistently run the organization, because it takes a lot of time and commitment. And this is being run by volunteers, and your staff are crucial. So always treat them with respect and show them your appreciation. I can't stress that enough. But it takes a lot for everybody. And we have day jobs, we have families, we have other commitments. So it is a worthwhile consideration to invest in a full-time employee who will be your executive manager of the daily operations over the year, because there'll be ebbs and flows of when you ramp up in terms of your staff and volunteers. But it's good to have that one person who can just keep an eye over everything and is a constant point of contact.
Yeah, I think is it Marie or Mary?
Mary.
Mary. Okay, I think Mary's hit on something that you definitely identify once you're in a leadership role in a nonprofit, is that you do have this advantage of a pure, like nonprofit motive. We're all there just to like do good, it's just oozing out of us, right?
Mhm.
But on the actual, where the actual like rubber meets the road, yeah, it is very operational. And I think you have to be prepared to have your act together, and like it can get very businesslike in terms of actually driving things forward. And I think for leaders of these groups, that's sort of like the transition point where you're really in the mix once you start realizing how this actually gets done. And yeah, that's an interesting observation. I agree.
I got a quick question for the three of you, because you guys are a little bit further down the road and I haven't experienced this yet, but what do you guys do when it kind of wanes, or when you're the low points, maybe not putting in as much money, or maybe just the participation's lower this quarter, or because things ebbs and flows. I know that from running a group up in Detroit, but it's more like getting people interested. So I knew that was hard, but now that there's kind of like more of an ecosystem, tech ecosystem down here in DC or in the DMV, let's just say that. How do you guys deal with the ebbs and flows?
Good question. We try to develop more programming. And we start to look at, okay, what worked, what's not working. All right, do we really need to keep what's not working, or do we need to revamp what's not working to make it work? And it comes back to literally having some kind of PowerPoint of, okay, for 2021, I want to do these things. And I haven't done, I've done these 3 things already, but I haven't done these things. So let's try to pull these things up to the forefront and start doing them. We have stuff that goes on all year. So I haven't really seen the highs and lows yet, because right now, Blacks, women, LGBTQIA, all of those, that's like the forefront. So it's constantly vets, like all of that is the forefront at this point. And so you're not really going to see that kind of like super highs or super lows.
Okay.
You may see like super highs and medium lows, but you're still going to get that. You'll still have that traction. You'll still have that participation. You'll still have that interest. And then I'm a big proponent of social media. So you got to put it out there. You got to constantly put your message out there. You got to constantly put your organization out there, so people know and people see. And you talk to, you've met the 3 of us, so you've got connections there. Talk to other organizations and other people so that they can put your message out there too, to their networks.
Yeah, two things with us. And for context, I used to run, when I was in Boston, I ran a group very similar to yours. So I very much understand that it's like 5 people in a room. It's like sick. I'm so glad I did this on Wednesday night. That's what comes with it, right? The 2 things that I think about with this is consistency is super important. Really at any level. I think you can't squat. Squat is sort of a weird word, but you can't squat on a organizational footprint and not be doing something with it. I know actually B-Sides, or groups not BSidesNoVA, but I know B-Sides has issues with this as well. Someone owns a website, someone owns all the stuff, but they're not actually organizing it. It's really important that if you have the intellectual property is not the right word, but if you have the IP, you're actually doing something with it. And even if it's just 5 people once a week, it's consistency is how people start to figure out you're legit. And then the other side, which is why being a nonprofit in tech is very cool, is I think we think about what can you do next with all these resources, because I think you can get, I think it's like $10,000 from Google Ads if you're a nonprofit. You can get, exactly. 10,000, a bunch of ad funding. Azure will give you a lot of credits. So tying this into security a bit, it's like, all right, well, we sort of exist to, you can build resumes through projects pretty easily if you're willing to actually like set the infrastructure. So, consistency, and then think about like, what can you do with this stuff? Like, sky's the limit. For instance, like you can set the CTF on Azure and then like get live, and then suddenly, you're hosting CTFs, and it's really easy to get this going. It's just, it takes time, but that's really the 2 things we focus on. That helps. Is it anyone else like
So, what are you guys doing, I guess, do you even want to say post-pandemic? Like, are you guys going to be back in like for our group, we're trying to be back in libraries or in a community center in the fall, like that September, October-ish timeframe. What are you guys doing to, I guess, get back in person, and what is your timeline for that?
So, Cheryl.
That's I'm going to jump in briefly there. That is an important question because I run a meetup in my area. Not saying who my employer is. The title of the meetup is the Mclean Cyber Meetup as hosted by Capital One. But there's the open question there of at what point do we take the role of stepping back into a group environment? There's a legal question there that's going on in the background right now, et cetera. And how do you take the steps to come out of pandemic and back into a community accepting and community open environment?
Well, we're lucky with the Diana Initiative. That is an annual event. So this year we made the decision. We had a make or break date. We watched what the other big decisions were being in terms of the other events that happen jointly with us in Vegas to make that call. And so we're virtual this year. Next year, we expect to be back in our, back in live. And so we're going to prepare for that and be optimistic. Just as a side note, I live in Toronto, Canada, where we've been locked down. Nobody gets past the border. Oh my gosh. So I can't, it's going to be really interesting when they start allowing us to move more freely and gradually work our way into live meetups. Like we have security meetups now. Everything's gone online up here as far as those kinds of events. I was hosting another event for students, a cyber simulation, an annual one. We had to run the entire thing online this year. It was quite a challenge, but again, for precisely that reason. We're looking forward to being able to do things in person again, but it's remarkable how we can learn to adapt.
You definitely need to have good insurance.
Yeah,
you gotta have business insurance.
Your bylaws for away for sure. Yeah.
We'll probably start going back. So we let the chapters decide what's safest and best for them. So Vegas is 100% open, but California not so much, right? So we let them make the decision. But our conference that's coming up in 2 weeks, that's going to be virtual because there was no way we were going to have people fly or come to a specific location. Next year, it'll probably be in person. Our awards event in October is going to be virtual because we just want to keep it safe. We want to make sure. And like Cheryl said, we kind of follow what some of the other bigger events are doing. And that's kind of how we decide whether or not we're going to be in person or not. But 2022, I do foresee us being back in person as long as COVID stays away and doesn't interfere with anything.
Yeah, because I went from like being concerned about, okay, do I have enough extension cords, plug it, to now, okay, what are people gonna, gloves, whatever now. So, and then also, like I said before, the venue space, I would like to be true to, the organization and be in Southeast Anacostia, but that DC's kind of like behind Northern Virginia sometimes, and Maryland, sometimes they're like, yeah, sometimes they're like, shut it down, so that's my kind of dilemma. Like when you talk about growth, it's also keeping that, integrity, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like we're focused on kind of like this area, but I guess for right now and maybe the year span, to next summer, we may have to be in Alexandria for a moment or Bethesda, or you know what I mean? Just
it does open a secondary question though, in that we have here the past year and a half or so has been a largely technical, largely remote, virtual experience.
Yeah.
That technology has been built. I'll be honest, I work with my singing quartet via Jamulus in order to do low latency quartet work. And this technology has advanced in the past year that we can see.
Wow.
And so, but when this is over, do you see a possibility of continuing the role in both a live and or a hybrid mode, if you will?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think hybrid, but for somebody that's still like small, like how we are, we're still growing. Kind of, I would like to say in person would be easier because it's just all come meet me and that test. But he brings up a good point. Insurance illegal, you know what I mean? So now I have to think about that. So we'll see. But for right now, we're on Twitch, Discord. Like I said, into the fall, that gives enough runway to figure it out.
Anything with regard to VetSec?
Oh, so I mean, we're fortunate to be a Slack community, so you got to pull us out of our homes to go into. So I mean, in serious note, we are digital natively, and I think that actually saved us a lot this last year. Although I think as an online community, we're an online community during 2020, and definitely took some leadership steering through that as well. But I think you can work through this by having a really clear sense of what your mission is. And if that's well defined and you understand like how that can be met and you get creative about it, like maybe you don't necessarily need to be in person or let me back up. I think if you understand the purpose of your organization, you have a really tight mission, then if you need to be in person or not, it's sort of going to answer itself.
Right.
From there, at least you get out of that decision purgatory where you're like, all right, I am, do you do high school? Like do you have an age range that you care about?
So we're like 30s, 20s, and yeah, coming into college that's
Gotcha.
kind of like
Yeah.
our niche.
So it's like, let's say you need to really work with high schoolers. I know this isn't exactly your situation, but it's like, all right, well, I know that my mission is to work with high schoolers, and they're not necessarily on, or they're doing other stuff online when I like to work with them. So that means I probably got to be in school. So that means, all right, well, that's aside for me. My mission dictates I need to be in person. So I'm gonna figure that out. And that's part of like owning leadership role. Like you just that's your stuff to solve. The gray area that a lot of other people can work with does not exist in these sorts of roles because you actually gotta make a decision. And that's just part of it though, in my opinion at least. Yeah. So that was a little intense. Sorry to
It's good points though.
Yeah, really.
We're running down on our time. I do want to briefly jump in and see if there's any questions from anyone in the chat that they might have for an individual or for the panel as a whole. Quickly type a Y if you're about to type a question. Otherwise, we'll go to one final one. Okay, while we're waiting on that, I'm going to ask just one more question. We have individuals who are sitting in chat. Some of them know about some of your organizations, some of them don't. For someone in this chat area who wants to know more about your organization, from the services it supplies or even to volunteer for your organization or to get more information, where can they go to learn more about your organization, and what is the best method by which you communicate out to the population? Start with Cheryl, maybe.
Sure. You can check out our website, dianainitiative.org. And we've also got Diana Initiative on Twitter. Start there and you'll find all you need, and happy to help.
So you'll find SControl2 on Twitter. We also have a website, but Twitter is like the best way to reach out and talk to us. We also have a Discord. Like I said before, for Africans to come in and to learn in a safe environment, cybersecurity, and all that pertains to that, certs, etc. So Twitter's the best way. Like I said, and we also have our website, SControl2.
Got it. I'm going to quickly jump over to a chat question here right now that Tracy did have in this. Garpit, I saw yours as well. This is the wonderful aspect of the technology of this platform. It's a learning experience for us all. Tracy was just curious, what challenges do you have with engaging members outside of North America?
Ooh.
Well, for us, it's sort of solved for us, although we're still working through it, is a lot of the organizations that we work with, they're American companies that want to support American veterans, and that's a bit of a split because we do have a not pretty international base, but I think without getting too much into the military jargon, the countries that are sort of allied with the U.S. in some loose sense, though we also have this membership inside our group, and I think we try and support them while understanding that I'm actually probably doing our membership here. They back up. we understand that some of our avenues of support are limited because of the people who want to support us and the entities. So what we do is we do the areas where we're weak at. We're aware of the UK, for instance. There's a group called TechNuts in the UK, very similar to us. So in the end, that our services stop. We know they exist. We can hand them over. So building those links for the groups is a short answer.
Quick question, Mary, do you want to briefly say where individuals can go to find out more information and how to volunteer if they so desire?
Yes, our website is Women's Cyberjitsu. That's CYBERJUTSU, not to be confused with the book that just came out. .org. You can also see us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram. And all the information is there to volunteer. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter if you want to reach out. Mary, M-A-R-I, reach out. I'll accept. We can talk. If you want to talk nonprofits, let me know.
I just want to call out the reason why we're rushing a little bit on this is the way this platform works is right at the hour we will be cut off whether we want to or not.
Yep.
We cannot move this for the next one. Groter Pete, I see the questions that you have come into chat. I will make an effort to go to each of the individual members of the panel, see if I can get those answered one-on-one and come back to you as well. One question he did have from a nonprofit perspective, can nonprofits utilize platforms like a GoFundMe or Sophie Community to get sponsorship to help the community?
Yes. Just know the regulations and the laws. Yeah. Crowdfunding is hard though, just FYI. You have to start months before you actually launch your crowdfunding campaign. Just FYI. You can't just launch and say, fund me. You gotta start putting the bug in people's ears ahead of time.
Got it. On the wrap up with regards to the organizations, I missed one person. Was it Jack?
Yeah, we're veteransec.com, or if you Google VetSec, we're not the security agency out in Arizona. We are the nonprofit, but yeah, that's veteransec.com. We might switch over to a .org pretty soon, part of that tech infrastructure I was talking about earlier. So Jack at veteransec.com is a good way to reach me, J-A-C-K.
And a nuanced question, can individuals who are still in active military via the .mil domain somewhere gain access to that Slack?
Oh, great point. Yes, we take active duty mil. That's actually a huge reason why we exist, is to reach into that upstream source and help them get through that process, because we do that pretty well, and the DoD is learning how to do that well as well. So in the meantime, that's where we sit, I think.
Wonderful. We're down to our last 60 seconds. I do want to thank Cheryl. I do want to thank Mary. I do want to thank Stephanie. I do want to thank Jack. And of course, as well, thank you for the service to the country. And I want to thank everyone for listening in for my first time at trying to do one of these things. We will hopefully be live with BSidesNoVA next year, or live hybrid. So some of our technical issues, thank you for dealing with them. And I just want to say thank you again, everyone. And you all have a good rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's cool, everyone. Take it easy.
Bye.